having lots of fun. Always carry around my loaded shotgun. If I think I'm gonna have a bad time, I got a little bit of smoke and a whole lot of wine. Had this girl, I thought she'd be my bride, but then she had to leave my house for another girl. And I'm down to the hill, having lots of fun. I always carry around my loaded shotgun. If I think I'm gonna have a bad time, I got a little bit of smoke and a whole lot of wine. If you hate me, see, there's a country boy from the state of Tennessee. Little bit crazy on the loud inside. I like to drink my whiskey and I like to get high. And I'm pretty good, I'm drinking, I'm having lots of fun. I always carry around my loaded shotgun. If I think I'm gonna have a bad time, I got a little bit of smoke and a whole lot of wine.
Testing, testing. Did this fix the audio issue?
Testing, testing.
All right, audio is working, comrades. Looks like I had issues with the audio. Sorry about that, comrades. I tried to do a false start. I finally did a start, and we're finally working. I'm Dust James, the Marxist-Leninist truck driver. This is Anti-Imperialist America. I'm coming to you live from my humble home in rural North Carolina. Today's episode is Anti-Imperialist. Sorry. Today's episode is Hasta la Victoria Siempre. And I put the title Hasta la Victoria Siempre because things have beaten me down. This terminally online culture that hypes petty drama, that gets people constantly nagging each other on every single aspect has beaten me down. I started this show year and a half, 2 years ago. And I started this show out of the goodness of my heart to out of the passion and my drive to push for a better future. Out of love for my friends and neighbors, out of love for my country, to see the lives of everyone around me, black folks, white folks, Chicano folks, all religions, workers, everyone but undocumented and documented workers on the line beside me. I'm tired. I'm tired of working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, not having enough for healthcare, not having enough for education, not having enough for housing. I'm tired of seeing my friends and neighbors go through the same thing. And I know that it can be better. I know a better world is possible. I know we no longer have to live underneath the tyrannical rule of profits. We no longer have to live under the monopoly capitalist imperialist system, where a small group of oil bankers, international bankers, and oilmen extract profits out of us here and keep down and exploit the rest of the world. Keep the world in poverty so they can exploit them. This small group of monopoly capitalists has got to the mountaintop. They have gotten to the top of the pyramid of the global economy that they create and manipulate, and they have said, the game is over. History cannot go any further. But the people are tired, and the people innovate, and the people will throw off this system and form a better future. And that better future is socialism. And that better future is when popular power, is when the people seize control of the banks and the industry and all of the modes of production and organize the economy in a rational way. And that is socialism. And that is the future. And that is the next step in human development. And ain't no monopoly capitalist going to keep us from it. We're going to keep on keeping on. Keep on trucking, as they say. No place that I'd rather be than here, spreading the good tides and the good greetings of socialism. So here I am, and here we go. I don't have much prepared this evening. I mostly have a few updates. I apologize, I haven't done a live in a while. I'm also watching my son Sherman. I'm listening intently in the background. He's in his room. We're watching television. My wife is over visiting some friends. So if I hear crying or if I hear a noise, I'm going to go check on my son. So watch out for that. We already had an audio issue. Hopefully we don't have any more issues. I don't have a huge show plan today. I don't really have a major theme. I have a few bullet points and news points to discuss. Hopefully this live won't go on too long. And thank you and shout out to David Fox, my co-host, the Thunder from Down Under, union organizer from Australia. Glad to have you here. If you haven't seen any of our Working Class Revolt shows, you got to watch our Working Class Revolt shows as well. And shout out to Miss N there. It's nice to have you. You've been a long term on here, and that is a video. I'm gonna play that video as the intro from now on because I was playing a rendition of I Saw the Light. I saw the light. I saw the light. No more darkness. No more night. Praise the Lord. I saw the light. I was doing that song, and that song has a lot of significance to me. It's what Willie Nelson ends all his concerts with. It's, very rural religious music. And religion is also a sign of the political and a sign of the people and a sign of the culture. And I had a beautiful recording of I Saw the Light by Roy Aycock, the king of country, and Kitty Wells, arguably the queen of country. I played that at the beginning, and I recently hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. And when I reached the 1,000 subscriber mark, I have the ability to be monetized. I'm not sure how exactly that works. I don't know if I can receive super chats or not. If somebody could attempt to send me a super chat and let me know if it works or not, I'm not sure if to turn that on. But when I reached the 1,000 subscriber mark, I was also able to share stuff. Like there's a feed on Facebook. And I reached the 1,000 subscriber mark, I could share stuff. And I've been sharing all my, if you look on the YouTube, I shared out Ramiro stuff. I shared out Connor Gillis stuff. And I went on his show and I shared that out. There's a feed on YouTube and you can share stuff on YouTube. I've been doing that. And I believe I can receive super chats now, but I'm not sure. If someone would attempt to send me one, I could, and let me know whether it works or not, that'd help. But it also monetized it. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but when I put on the intro of I Saw the Light, it demonetized because it was copyright. And I was thinking that recording is from the 50s. How on earth there's no way that is going to be, copyrighted, but it was copyrighted and it did demonetize those videos. And then I found this video on my computer of me and my late great brother, Ryan Nettleton. And that was one night of us singing together. And I really like it. And, I don't really like the drug stuff in it, but it was, okay. Thank you, Andy Funaro. Thank you for letting me know you're not able to super chat. I will look into the ability to be able to super chat. Thank you, Nino Vimo as well. I will, after this chat, I will get super chat set up for tomorrow's stream. Tomorrow's stream, we're going to be having Jay Theron-Paul back on, and he is going to give an academic presentation. He's Jay Theron-Paul, also known as the Oriental Despot, is doing his doctorate on whether or not China is imperialist. And not to give it away, but the answer is no. And Jay Theron-Paul is actually saying a lot of the things that, communists argue, so-called communist, ultra-leftist, revisionist, or right revisionists will say is China is imperialist because they use finance capital. But in reality, the financial capital of China is actually fighting imperialism, because China is a socialist system that doesn't need predatory loans. It can create, it's in their interest to do win-win trade. So they actually build up countries and improve their trading partners, and it helps China and it helps the country they do business with. The exact opposite of the United States, where they give them horrible deals. And then if they try to do deals with someone else, they sanction them. Or if they try to have an economy that isn't being ripped off, that isn't being exploited, that isn't being stopped from development, then they're cut off and suppressed. And that's imperialism. Imperialism wants to hold back progress. Imperialism keeps oppressed nations oppressed, exploited, and dependent, and stops them from further developing. Or if they are allowed to develop, they're only allowed to develop for the benefit of the imperialists. And it's really holding back history. It's holding back development. And when China helps develop countries, and when China, when a country develops, that brings it closer to socialism. That's the whole thing. Scarcity is the factor that holds back the development of all the means of productions. We started with hunter-gatherer. We went to slave societies, to feudal, to capitalism, eventually socialism. And each one of those becomes less authoritarian, receives more human rights, and it's based on an expanded mode of production. So if countries are no longer exploited, they can build up their resources. That brings them closer to socialism. And in reality, the financial system of the Chinese banks and Chinese finance is actually fighting against imperialism. And that's my understanding from what I've read of Jay Theron-Paul's work. But the very smart, very articulate PhD student Jay Theron-Paul, also known as the also known as the Oriental Despot, will be giving a presentation on working class revolt tomorrow on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. So please look forward to that. And the video is already up. The pre-video is already up on Facebook. It's shareable. If you go to my channel, you go up to upcoming videos. It's already an upcoming video, and you can share that out. Mark your calendars. Get that ready. It's gonna be great. Yes, and Nino Vimo. It really does stop them from being real competitors. Well, the reason why I got to do the intro, I know the audio is horrible. I know it's not the best performance, but it has a lot of sentimental value, that intro. And I think I'm going to use that for the intro until I get a better one. If people want to, if I am really looking for a version of, if you're a musician, a classical bluegrass or country or just rock musician, whatever you kind of musician you are, and you would like to send me an uncopyrighted video or upload a version of I Saw the Light to your channel or send it to me, I'd rather have I Saw the Light be the introduction, but I do not have permission from anyone to use their video, and nor do I have an uncopyrighted version of it. So that's just going to be the intro for now. Any musicians that are willing to do a version of I Saw the Light, I'd love to and make me an intro. That'd be great. I'd love to have that as the intro. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of notes. I haven't been live in a minute. I've been maybe I can get in some personal updates. Last Friday, I came home from work and I was dead tired, and I sat down and I got in my chair, and then I didn't get up for a few hours, and I went to bed. And when I went to bed, my foot was hurting horribly and I could barely walk, and I humbled to bed. I woke up in the morning and I had just watched a really good stream from Ramiro. And Ramiro did a good stream on that horrible surreal Netflix season of Squid Games. I think I watched I finished the Squid Games. I actually watched Ramiro's talk on the Squid Games. Ramiro did a good talk with I believe somebody from Korea about the Squid Games, about capitalism. And it's kind of like a horror movie. And I was sitting there in bed with pain in my foot. And I kept like imagining scenes from the movie or scenes from that show. And I had a horrible nightmare, and I had this horrible pain in my foot. And then I woke up on Saturday morning, and it wasn't just the pain in my dream. There was a horrible pain in my foot. And I went to, I couldn't walk, and I was scared. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Did I have a stroke? There's a problem with my heart, problem with my joints. What the hell's going on with me? There's horrible pain in my foot. I couldn't put any weight on my foot. And I went to the hospital, and they did x-rays. They did an ultrasound on my leg to see if it was some kind of blood vessel or a blood clot. And then, I couldn't walk, and they gave me a hard shoe, and they gave me crutches. I was in crutches for like 2 or 3 days, and this just came out of nowhere. And then I decided, I need to get my health straight, and I went to the doctor. And first I went to a what do you call them people to deal with the bones, an orthopedic, and I asked the orthopedic to give me a note to get off work for the rest of the week, because I didn't know how long it'd take to heal. So I was out of work all last week. Eventually I went, and the orthopedic said it was plantar fasciosis or something. It's like a torn tendon in your foot, and I heal very quickly. So I was able to walk in 2 or 3 days, and I was ready to go back to work on Monday, and I worked all work this week. Um, I also went to the doctor, a regular doctor, and they said I have issues with high blood pressure, cholesterol. Not that it was like crazy high, but just high enough where they may need to start treating it. Got me on medicine and stuff, got me a blood pressure monitor. Oh my God. And it really does take it out of you. When you work 7 years, I worked 7 years over the road. And there ain't, you can pack food or what have you and try to. But man, I was working 80, 90-hour weeks. I mean, a lot of stuff that you only have a 70-hour clock, but a lot of stuff you do off the clock in preparation, especially with flatbed. You load off the clock, you unload off the clock. You're trying to do as much off the clock as possible because it's pace work. And there's not a lot of food, access to food. You go to truck stops, you get Subway, McDonald's, and horrible truck and nasty tasting, expensive truck food, and it's all unhealthy. And when you live like that for years, it will put a beating on your health. And I've been off the road for a year, and it's just disgusting the way they work us to death. I went from making $200 a week in a printing factory after I dropped out of school, after I went to school to be a history teacher. And once I learned what the curriculum was and how much and I kind of looked at what teachers made, I'm like, and the curriculum is this horrible Americanist, George Washington, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, the U.S. curriculum in the schools. I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, they won't even, I mean, you got people mad about the watered down critical race theory bullshit. That's not even a really genuine representation of the national question. The Confederate Daughters of the Confederacy wrote the textbooks in the South into the 1970s and 80s. So, I mean, the curriculum in the schools is horrible, and I was also, I had a lot of stuff catch up with me, when you grow up in poverty, you grow up with a lot of trauma. I mean, like I said, there was 8 of us down a mile-long dirt road in a 2-bedroom trailer at one point. And it was very dysfunctional. And when you grow up in that kind of poverty and that instability, it has real effects from you. I dealt with alcoholism. I drank heavily for years, starting when I was 14. And a trailer park, first starting with a trailer park with the Mexican guys. I was 14. I was leaving my girlfriend's house, and the guys in the back of the alley were like, "Hey, gringo, come over here and get a beer," And and you deal with this, and it's you understand why folks living in poverty, getting the drugs and getting alcohol when they're dealing with this trauma and generational. And poverty also has generational trauma. And then I was making $200 a week at this print factory up in Durham, and I was like, I can't deal with this. And truck driving offered me the ability to really kind of escape the poverty trap, escape the living paycheck to paycheck. But at the same time, it was a lot of sacrifice. I sacrificed 8 years of my life that, I really couldn't get involved in activism as much as I wanted to. I couldn't further my education as much as, what I did to further my education while I was driving trucks is kind of like what I still do to today. While I'm driving, I put on YouTube videos. I put on news programs. I listen to audiobooks. There was an old union demand back in the day where before they really had access to recording technology and stuff like that, a lot of the bus drivers would have as part of their pay or part of their incentive to be there is they would have readers. They would pay someone minimum wage to read to the bus driver. Also provided a job for them as well as having someone to read for them, pay someone to read to them while they're driving. And that's actually something that the bus drivers union back in the 40s and the 50s actually organized for, was to have um, readers, people reading to them. And, but I mean, you think about, you got to work 70, 80 hours a week away from your family. And that's a lot of sacrifice. And it wasn't easy. It was hard when there's all these I mean, back a long time ago, there was a lot more owners and operators. And owners and operators could make a little bit more, but the trucking industry is becoming further and further monopolized. And it's more and more company drivers who have less pay and less rights. And I went from making $200 a week, and then I went through a probation. I made like 7, and then I made like 8, and I made 8 for about a year. And I finally got in the flatbed, and I was making like 12, 11, and then I was making decent money. I made decent money for a while. I was able to save up enough to get a house, but, and I was away from my wife. Think about the strain that puts on personal relationships and marriages. A lot of truck drivers go through divorces. I mean, it's beautiful that my wonderful wife was able to put up with a hard job of being there without me. We tried 5 years to have a kid. We finally have our son for the first year. I missed almost the first year of my son's life, and eventually became unbearable. And I had to get home. And it was bad. I mean, so, and I've been this last year, I've been off the road. It's almost been a year, and I've had local jobs, and health insurance I have not found a decent job locally that has nearly as good health insurance as the over the road companies. Nor have I found anything that pays as much. I mean, there was this horrible company that I worked for a little bit, called Cormart. I'll call them right out. My little brother still works for them, but I'll call them sons of bitches out. Cormart is owned by the Davenports. And the Davenports are one of them big money families, one of them 5 big money families, going back, Rockefellers, Carnegies, Davenports. And they own the property that this warehouse is on that delivers to convenience stores. And convenience stores are horrible places. Convenience stores, a lot of people, that's the only thing in poor rural neighborhoods and inner city and oppressed communities and inner cities. A lot of places, and a lot of people don't have cars. People are getting scooters and stuff like that. You can't carry much, and people living up on top of each other. I mean, it's messed up. A lot of people depend on going to these little convenience stores, and a lot of convenience stores are more and more chain owned, and convenience stores offer tobacco, alcohol, and nasty, disgusting corn syrup laced foods that are poison and unhealthy. And a lot of people get a surprising amount of their nutrition from these stores. And it's disgusting. And the way they treat the workers that deliver to the convenience stores is absolutely horrible. They were making us work off the clock. The way they had it had us go down in teams. And some of them routes would be like 20-hour campaigns. You got a 14-hour clock by DOT, but the way they were doing it was they'd have they drive you to a city 3-4 hours away, and one person drive and one person sleep. And then you get to that city, and then you'd work 14 hours straight, unloading hard, heavy labor. And then the other person would drive back those 3-4 hours. So it'd be a whole day. You'd get 3-4 hours of sleep, work 14 hours straight, and then have to drive 3 or 4 hours or vice versa. and you show up and you bring in candy, you bring in cigarettes. It was no joke. I mean, they worked the hell out of you. And it was on call, swing shift. It was disgusting. And they are always trying to get you out of money. And man, that was a horrible job. And I've been through 2 or 3 local jobs. I think I'm finally with a local job, but man. And I don't know why I'm going all through all this, but I'm kind of having a reemergence, a refocusing. There's been a lot of petty, horrible discussions online. I ain't even going to talk about it. I got folks over minor political strategies and tactics won't even talk to me no more. I mean, the shit is crazy. And this is another thing I want to get at is the suppression and the manipulation of these online tools. I mean, it really goes back to the 2011 Arab Spring. The 2000 Arab Spring is when they really showed, when the Western capitalist imperialists really showed what they were able to do with their new tool of social media. And what they did, Tunisia was really the beginning of the spring, but they were able to see that online, they were able to almost mobilize the people and overthrow governments. Twitter's not real. Facebook's not real. It's all digital. It's all online. But there's real people putting real labor into those platforms, and it's being manipulated. And then it has real world effects. And they were able to use that, to help overthrow Gaddafi. Gaddafi, the leader, the socialist leader, the leader of a socialist Arab, socialist Islamic nation in Africa, the most prosperous nation in Africa, was overthrown partly because of this new technology. And they were able to unleash it. And we're seeing it all over the place. We've seen them manipulate the people in Belarus. We've seen them manipulate the people in Cuba. We've seen them. There's a great, Ramiro did a good program recently showing and documenting in real time the suppression of people in Nicaragua. Legitimate journalists in Nicaragua are having their online stuff censored. While the opposition, the new version of the Contras, the disgusting right wingers who want to tear down the socialist state that the Nicaraguan people have worked so hard to build, they manipulate them to create riots, and they used it in Bolivia against the socialist movement there, and they're using it right here in the United States. Why are we always nitpicking over these stupid little tiny issues? Because those fights and those conflicts are being raised in the algorithms. And people doing legitimate work are being shut down. On Facebook, there's a great group called Redneck Revolt. And Redneck Revolt republished Hy Thurman's interview, the leader of the Young Patriots that was in coalition with the original Black Panther coalition, and he does this great interview. And I was looking around online and I found it. I read it on one of my. If you go back and watch my video Hillbilly Revolutionaries, I actually read part of that interview. It's pretty good, but the site that hosted that shut it down. And then the only other site that re-uploaded that interview was Redneck Revolt. And you are not allowed to share Redneck Revolt links, neither in Messenger or on Facebook. So if I want to share with you that interview, I can't share that interview with you on Facebook. And it seems like anything that seems to threaten them or anything they do not like, they can shut down like that in a second. But anything that creates division, anything that's not productive, anything that's simply entertaining, manipulating, pushing their points, they can hype it. These are their tools. They're not our tools. And it's horrible. It's kind of like the elections. I mean, the electoral elections. If you look at the electoral elections, and the electoral elections, it's also their system. They keep out the Green Party, the Democrats. We all know about the Republicans' voter suppression. The Republicans pass um, voter ID laws that just put one more step in the way of those on the outskirts that are already vulnerable, predominantly working people, young people, oppressed people of oppressed nations, black and brown folks. They Republicans will voter suppress that way. Also, there's gerrymandering, where they'll draw up the districts. I mean, the majority of the people in the United States support the Democrats, but the Republicans hold an insane amount of power because of voter suppression, manipulation, and gerrymandering. But the Democrats also engage in voter suppression as well. They take Greens off the ballot, and we look at the way even a sock dem imperialist like Bernie Sanders, who says he was for health care and some labor rights, some other things, he's not even allowed to get into the general election because the DNC, a private corporation which controls more than half of the entire political process, essentially, because the Democrats are the bigger, stronger party, and they're allowed to do whatever they want in their primaries. They can suppress people, even sock them imperialists and sheepdogs like Bernie Sanders are suppressed. And the same way they use their tool of the electoral process, these Facebook and these Twitters and all this social media stuff, and YouTube, even though I'm on it, it's owned by them. It is their tool. They use this tool. They use everything to maintain the system of imperialism, monopoly capitalism, all to bring profits for these few international bankers and oil companies, at the expense of the working people here and the oppressed nations abroad. And it's absolutely disgusting. But I mean, what are we supposed to do? Completely reject social media? I mean, obviously you can sell. I'm not doing that. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at DustJames90. And the thing is, these are unreal spaces and it's online, but they have real consequences. And the majority of the work, because it's so much more convenient, because it's so instant, because it's addicting, it builds dopamines. It's almost like playing the lottery. Like, you make a post on Twitter, you make a post on Facebook, you're waiting for those likes. And when you get those likes, you feel good, you feel reassured. You get those retweets, you get those comments, you get in arguments. It's really addicting. It gives you dopamines. It gives you things you normally would get from healthy relationships, because we're so isolated and we're meant to work so long hours and we're moved around and we have families separated, not only on different side of the borders, but right here in the United States. We have people fleeing horrible conditions in Mexico, coming here, having their families back there. In the United States, we have similar stuff. My family was forced from a rural area in upstate New York down into the South, because there was no jobs there, and the further monopolization of the agriculture has devastated and destroyed lots and lots of rural towns, from the Midwest and the Fly area to up north as well. And it's disgusting. And they moved a lot of the jobs down south because there wasn't a union movement here, because they didn't have to pay health care. So we came down here for jobs that were horrible. My family came down here about the same time all these folks came up from Mexico, and I worked on the lines in every factory in town, side by side with undocumented workers. My first job it was the was in the chicken plant, poultry processing with majority undocumented workers. That was my job, my first job after my 18th birthday, and they put me in the cooler. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna check on my son. I'll be right back. Sorry about the interruption, folks. What I'm saying is capitalism separates families through economic necessity, both from oppressed nations to here, even to different regions here. It destroys culture. There's this. I saw this recently. This good movie called Concrete Cowboys on not that cool old Jerry Reed film from back in the 70s. Uh, but Concrete Cowboys on Netflix um, was about the lingering cowboy culture and horse culture in the black community. And what it talks about, in these big cities like Philadelphia and etc., back before they had cars became the norm, there was a lot of give me 1 more second. Sorry about that, everybody. Had to go change a diaper. My son is doing fine now. So I'm saying, so capitalism, separates families. It does these horrible things. So I kind of lost my train of thought. Hopefully I can edit that out later. Let's get into it. There is CPI is doing some great work. Brother Caleb Maupin, they're doing amazing things, and I'm glad to be associated with them any way whatsoever. That was, I talked about earlier how, part of my I was able to further my self education, further myself, my education by listening to YouTube videos while I was driving. And one of my favorite ones that I listened to was Caleb Maupin, who is also from a rural area. Has a clear, concise way of saying things, has an optimistic way. And, he's the one that really pushed me into understanding that the revolution didn't stop with the Soviet Union. The revolution has continued all these years. And all these things that these Western Marxists don't recognize is socialist developments, anti-imperialist developments are the progression of history. Am I muted? Okay. Is that better? We need critical thinking. Let me know if my audio comes back. I have no idea what has been said and what hasn't been said, but I'm just going to keep talking. Center for Political Innovation has been doing great things. I was able to to attend, apparently their Okay. I was able to attend, really their first meeting, which was which was the retreat up in Saxton, Pennsylvania. And you can watch, and I highly recommend the Saxton lectures. Caleb does a great job of doing that. And in the Saxton lectures, you can actually see me, fat trucker from North Carolina, up there, talking about Trotskyism. I give a part of my speech in the Saxton lecture on Trotskyism. I give audience feedback. And I think that is absolutely amazing what they're doing and what they've been able to do with just a small amount of resources is absolutely amazing. They defended the Nicaraguans. an ambassador or a minister of Nicaragua was in a small church, and Contra forces attempted to disrupt the meeting, and people from the CPI ran the Contras out of the church. The CPI organized a demonstration in favor of Alex Saab, and Alex Saab was a diplomat, a Colombian citizen that was working on behalf of the Venezuelan government, and he was working to garner trade between Venezuela and Iran, so the people of Venezuela could eat after the United States created the sabotage, created the chaos, manipulated the oil prices, and has sanctioned them and kept them out of the economy to starve them into submission from developing their country. They have someone go and negotiate on their behalf, and they are kidnapped. Alex Saab was kidnapped in Cape Verde, small island off of Africa. U.S. had no jurisdiction to do with it. It was a non-U.S. citizen working between two countries that have nothing to do with the United States. They kidnapped him because these countries want to benefit each other and build each other up and create economic systems outside the dominance of the imperialist system. And the Center for Political Innovation organized a rally in New York City and in Central Square, I believe, and Nicolas Maduro mention their work. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful what's going on with the Center for Political Innovation, and they're pushing forward. I'm glad to push, and I have had John Brown volunteers come on my program. I have had the San Angelo Solidarity group out in Texas come down here. John Brown Volunteers, full team outreach with Joey Shantz, Keaton Mansfield. I've met both of those great young men, and it's absolutely positive work they've been doing. Full-time outreach in New York City. Eventually, Keaton, and I believe is down in Mexico right now, waiting to go to Nicaragua, where they will be election observers. And it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I think about, all the stuff I've been through and gone through, and just the idea that it can be better, and to see people working towards that, is very fulfilling and touching. And you need to be a part of this. The capitalist ain't going to give you the job that you want. The capital, you can work as hard as you want. Maybe you can rise up a little bit yourself. But even if you to rise up a little bit yourself, part of the way you're going to rise up is you're going to be forced to put down and keep down parts of your community. It seems like the only way to get ahead in this life is to step on somebody else's head. And that's dog eat dog capitalism, and I'm tired of it. There's a better society, a new society, where we can lift each other up. And we can have a basis for all people, and then we can and then we have a basis for all people. In the earlier stages of socialism, you can encourage entrepreneurship as well. You can encourage small business. You can grow the economy. It's absolutely amazing what China has done. We started out with the Soviet model that took countries out of absolute poverty and industrialized and electrified and just changed the most backward country in Europe to industrial superpower within a matter of decades, defeated the Nazis. And then socialism became stagnant. And then China and the Deng Xiao reforms was able to keep socialism with some of the flexibility of a market sector. Market sector socialism, where the state government has absolute supremacy over the economy, but you have a large economic sector which provides a base for the people, but also provides some of the benefits of a market. And it's still socialism. A lot of people say, we can't have socialism, we can't have capitalism, and you got to have a mix. Well, it's not a mix. We need socialism, because without without that strong government to control the economy and provide for the needs of the people, you will be stuck in this backward spiral in the anarchy of production. So, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful the way socialism has continued to progress. Gaddafi was socialism. Saddam was a socialist. Assad is a socialist. And the Iranians are anti-imperialists. They don't call themselves socialist, but they really do have a government that they have a government that has supremacy over the economy. And they have that because the material conditions push them and force them into that direction. So getting back to where I'm going at, I seen the way people around me had to deal with. And I grew up hard, and I see folks that went to school with me that used to pick on me for not having all the brand name clothes and all that crap. They got it worse off than me because I was able to, sacrifice and push and get a trade and put the work in to get, a little bit higher. I mean, man, ever since I got off the road and I haven't had as much money, I've been dealing with this damn credit card debt and all this insurance, and I got health problems and all this other bullshit. And, it's still a struggle. And I struggled so damn hard just to get this damn point that I'm at now. And I look at folks around me that had better than I did when I was growing up, and they got it worse off than I do now. And it's absolutely disgusting. I see so many young people's lives destroyed by drugs. My little brother, before, when he died in a moped accident on the way back from a horrible job. Couldn't afford a vehicle. Couldn't afford a safe vehicle. I rode mopeds and scooters. I rode mopeds a good portion of my adult life as well. That whole time before I started driving trucks, and a long time while I was driving trucks, my main form of transportation was a scooter. And a lot of people have to deal with that. And it's unsafe, and the roads aren't meant for it. And people are mean to you. And this barbaric, individualistic society is unsafe and produces unsafe conditions. And, he never could find a job. He was working with my dad, and he got into crime. He stole some coins from my dad and pawned them. And I noticed some of the crew that he was running with was doing drugs. I seen people I grew up have their lives destroyed by drugs. And people get into drugs not because they're happy, not because they have opportunities, because they have a lack of opportunities. They see it as escape. And drugs are a way of dealing with the trauma of poverty, of dealing with the trauma of this individualistic society. And it's disgusting, and it can be better. And it's absolutely inspiring to see people working towards and defending the rising up global South. I'll name the countries again: Nicaragua, Venezuela, China, Bolivia, Iran, Syria, Russia. The anti-imperialist and socialist bloc Eurasia had a summit, and they called it human-centered development. Doesn't have to be like this. This dying, decaying empire is falling. And, it's going to come down, and we got to do something about it. We got to do something to get it going. So I called this show Hasta la Victoria Siempre. Because, there's been a lot of Twitter bullshit. It's been getting cold. I've been feeling down the dumps. I got folks that no longer want to talk to me no more. I got, people at their throats over stupid bullshit. And I'm tired of it. And I want to get back to, some of them shows I did about a year ago. I have a little short video called The Voter Suppression from Venezuela to North Carolina. And essentially what the video is saying is, when they pepper spray black folks in North Carolina going to poll, It's for the same imperialist system as when black and brown people down in Venezuela vote in a socialist government. And then the United States has the audacity and the name of democracy to appoint a non-elected pawn, this Guaido person that was randomly appointed as the president of Venezuela. And they go in there and shut them down and try to strangle their political. That is voter suppression. That is suppression of poor black and brown people. It's absolutely disgusting. So I mean, you got voters. It's all linked. It's all linked. The way to work, we're all fighting against the same. People want to put. They want to say, "Oh, I emphasize the oppressed nations. Oh, I emphasize the workers here." Or you got your different emphasis, and it's okay to have your different emphases. But there is so much room for solidarity and unity. The slogan of Occupy, we are the 99%. I mean, against the 1%, it's not even a 1%. It's a 0.00001%. This small group. There's like 5 or 6 families, oil banking cartels that run the entire global economy and profit and trying to hold back history. And all we got to do is see it. And all we got to do is build power. And all we got to do is make principled political alliances to overthrow them. The winning coalition in the United States is the 99%. If we can get people of oppressed nations, if we can get workers, rural and urban, if we can get the small levels of the capitalists that are being proletarianized, that currently have, reactionary, horrible views, but they're being further proletarianized and kicked out. And all of these groups, mid-level capitalist, lower-level capitalist, working class, oppressed nation, black people, brown people, all have the same enemy that is holding down, suppressing them. It is in the material interest of such a vast majority of people to go against this small minority of the parasites. And they get us in these stupid battles, over, I'm the better socialist and I'm more holier than you. And it's so disgusting. And what I'm trying to do is get this message in plain Marxism, scientific socialism. Scientific socialism is a great way of understanding the world. Is a way of analyzing material conditions to understand what's going on, to see which place is going, the way history is going. Scientific socialism is essentially this. I mean, like I said, hunter-gatherers became the slave society, became the feudal societies, which became capitalism, eventually become socialism. What is the driving factor? It is the contradictions. As these societies, based off these modes of production develop, there became different classes that come into contact with each other, and that through that class conflict pushes the birth of the new society. Currently, I mean, the rise of the bourgeoisie overtook the new capitalist economy, and the rise of the bourgeoisie overtook the feudal system and formed a more efficient, more effective system that enabled the Enlightenment age, that made the basis for the superstructure of human rights. Before the 1600s, 1700s, it wasn't that humans were stupid, and no society before Europe came up with the idea they were horrible, evil people that didn't believe in human rights. It's that they didn't have the economic basis for human rights until the emergence of capitalism. And now, after the emergence of capitalism, we have the contradictions of worker and capitalist. As the proletariat gets stronger, the proletariat will overtake the capitalist and form a socialist society. And that is what Marx came into being. But Lenin redefined it that no, capitalism isn't Marx was at the beginning of capitalism. And then Lenin came in at the era of imperialism. And in the era of imperialism, there's not only the contradiction of worker and capitalist, there is a contradiction between the oppressor nations and the oppressed nations. And really that thing has enabled capitalism to endure long more than Marx could imagine. And I would argue this process of monopolization has continued to a even more morbid point and an even hyper monopolized point that Lenin couldn't even grasp in his time period. And these technology of social media, computers, and artificial intelligence, it's destabilizing capitalism. At the same time, it's further monopolizing capitalism, and it's on its way out. And really, it's taken the form. The current class struggle today is the front lines of the current class struggle today is being fought by the oppressed nations. But workers within the oppressor nations have a role to play in that larger struggle. This is imperialism. So when a worker fights against the monopoly capitalists here for more rights, they're an anti-imperialist, because imperialism is monopoly capitalism. When oppressed people and workers in the United States build power and oppose the monopoly capitalists, they're anti-imperialists. And when they improve, mostly when they improve the conditions, see, Marxism is, when one class gets stronger, it overtakes the other. So when the working class, is no longer kept in a position where it is dependent and no longer kept in that poverty, if you improve conditions and get rid of scarcity, scarcity is what's necessary for the capitalists to stay in power. So when you one more dollar in the hands of a well-paid union worker is one less dollar in the hands of a monopoly capitalist. And the same thing goes for the development of the oppressed nations. When Venezuelan oil was not being sold by the monopoly capitalists, the energy dominant banking cartels, and it was being sold by the Venezuelans, that took money directly out of the hands of monopoly capitalists. So the petro-socialists were anti-imperialists. And when a socialist government does not allow their country to be exploited, that's taking money directly out of the hands of monopoly capitalists. That's anti-imperialism. When poor people in poor countries eat in an economic system that is outside the hands of the monopoly capitalists, that is anti-imperialism. When you improve the conditions of workers and you can improve the conditions of people in oppressed nations, improving the conditions of workers and oppressed people is anti-imperialism. So I got all these people say, oh, it's not socialist, or, even capitalism improved conditions. Well, yes, there was a productive period of capitalism. Capitalism had a more productive period where it was expanding the means of production and it was improving conditions in comparison to feudalism. Capitalism was a step forward to feudalism. The next stage is dying, as capitalism, the system, is dying. A new one is coming about. And morbid capitalism, dying capitalism. As capitalism dies, it becomes obsolete. It can no longer improve conditions. It can no longer provide for the people. So the people fighting in their material interest, both workers and oppressed people fighting for their material interest, opposes the old system and helps bring forth the new system. Bring forth the go to all. Marx said to go to all groups, all people that are fighting against injustice in the current society. And so you go to all the movements. You go to all the movements that are fighting against the current order of things. And in that movement, so that movement isn't manipulated. And just to reform capital, you raise the property question. And you raise the property question, you raise the material interests of oppressed people. And that will come into direct conflict with the monopoly capitalists, and that will push history forward. The next stage is, so I've been on here a while. Sorry for the interruptions. I'm going to go through a few of these comments, and then I'm going to call it a night. Shout out to Ramiro. Great show. Professional filmmaker. Please go and subscribe to his work. Niece, I am with you on China. As a matter of fact, the Chinese keep accomplishing even with the boot of U.S. on their neck. And that's absolutely true. And it's only getting worse. And this Cold War is intensifying. All the class contradiction is intensifying. The national contradiction is intensifying. We're starting to have a multipolar world where the old dying imperialist system is no longer has global dominance. We see the rise of the Eurasian bloc, and the Eurasian bloc has human-centered development. It is literally good versus evil. Socialism and revolution itself is not the end of all injustice. It is simply a step forward and an improvement of the material conditions for the people. It's an improvement for that there will still be inequality in socialism, and there will still be unjust inequality in socialism. Socialism is simply when the means of productions are organized in a rational way. But until you eliminate scarcity, you won't, you're still going to need a bureaucracy. You're still going to need, it's like we got a fridge. And if you got a wealthy family that can afford to put all the food they want in the fridge, anybody can go to the fridge and get whatever the hell they want out of it. But if you have a poor family and got all that, you need somebody to sit there in front of the fridge and make sure not everybody can eat it. And then if you got somebody to sit there in front of the fridge, they're going to want a little more money. That's inequality. That's just what it is. And inequality is a basis of scarcity. Just like before capitalism, you had feudalism as a horrid, barbaric society, and they didn't even think about human rights. Just like there's going to have rights and human development. There's going to be rights and opportunities under socialism, and there's going to be economic abundance to the point not even fathomable in our current setting. And it's amazing. It's a beautiful future, and all we have to do is organize and push for it. Marx said that capitalism was inevitable. Socialism was inevitable. And he's right and he's kind of wrong. There can be ebbs and flows of history. Without a revolution will not be successful unless there's an organized people and people with the grit to fight for their conditions. Without any fight, there's no progression. If that working class coming up against the monopoly capitalist class, if the workers in oppressed nations don't have a fight and struggle against the monopoly, we could very well go into something worse, an illiberal form of capitalism, a semi-feudal state. And we're going to have to do something about it. There we go. Shout out to Space Communist. Space Communist was the first person to make a live comment. All right. I'm still going through here. Sloppy Joe, primitive communism is not the way forward. Under primitive communism, the reason why the slave society took over from primitive communism is because primitive communism was equal, it was egalitarian, but they still had very barbaric social practices. And this isn't racial, this is all of humanity regardless of race in the primitive communist thing, they had to spend tons of hours, searching for food and hunting meat. And I talk about having to work 80, 90-hour weeks. And then I come home and, I got a house. I can go to the grocery store and get food. Even that state of living. I have access to art, and I have access to science, and I have access to all these innovations. Primitive communism, because people were working so long and it was so hard to survive, did not have as a good a life as many of the people had even under feudalism. So primitive communism is not the way to go. The next step is communism. The next step is socialism. We need improvement in our conditions. We need innovation in our technologies. You're not going to go backwards. Yes, Google has the power to manipulate, remove like interchange or whatever Google considers against the interest of the super wealthy. In the interest of the super wealthy. And that's absolutely right. Google is their tool. Facebook is their tool. But just like the electoral process, we have to take whatever tools we have available to organize. So we have to be on social media, but we have to know that it's not ours. We have to know its limitations. We have to have backups. We need to use all power necessary to be able to overthrow the system. But we need to have no illusions in this system. I'm still going through all these comments. Sendero, there aren't many tougher than the people of Nicaragua. They've been persecuted by the U.S. government for 100 years. Still, they're standing strong. They have been forced to endure this crime. Yeah, I tear up when I think of the achievements of Venezuela, and I think of the achievements of Nicaragua. And I look at the conditions that people from Mexico fled, and I look at the conditions from people from Honduras fled, and I look at and I talk with people who talk with people in the diaspora, and the amount of poverty and chaos in capitalist Latin America is absolutely disgusting. You think about how bad it is for workers in the United States, the horrible picture I talked about with the drugs. The life expectancy is actually falling. And you think about how bad it is here, and people in the oppressed nations have worse. And to think about how vastly they've improved the lives, the society, and even the culture and the very lifestyle of the people in Nicaragua and Venezuela is absolutely beautiful. And they've come up against horrible odds. They've rose up against adversity and constant imperialist sabotage to form a better, more advanced economic system, political, social system to improve the lives of the people. It's absolutely inspiring. When I think about, everyone in Cuba has access to medical care. And I think about the years that I lived without health insurance. And I think about all the people I know. And I think about even now, I don't want to go to the doctor because I'll miss work. I don't want to go to the doctor because it will cost a copay. It's going to raise the credit card. It's going to keep me in debt longer. So I don't want to go to the doctor. When I think about, what they've been able to do in countries way worse off than this, it's absolutely inspiring. And I think about the political power of mostly poor black and brown people in Venezuela and Nicaragua. And I see, poor black and brown people in the worst jobs and the worst conditions here. And it's just a glimpse of the better future that we can have. And it's not coming from no Bernie Sanders, and it's not coming from imperialist Europe. It's coming from the global South. It's coming from the people. It's coming from the international proletariat. And I want to be a part of that. I want to stand in solidarity. I want to do what's necessary to have that political freedom and that power and that gain in the material conditions for my community, my international community within the belly of the beast. Whatever I can do to be a part of that gives me, I might not even see in my lifetime material improvements, but just knowing I'm a part of bringing about this future gives you such fulfillment. You know, we talk about these deaths of disparity. When you get on drugs, you get on alcohol. People are so depressed and so out of it, and so disconnected and so isolated from each other that they're literally killing themselves. A good escape from I mean, I was an alcoholic for years, and I was dealing with poverty and generational trauma and trauma from poverty. And honestly, my family, but as well as being a part, knowing to go back to, an earlier part in my life, remember an earlier part of my life when, I was part of a socialist organization and I was pushing forward a cause of a better future. That's something to live for. It's something to give you fulfillment in your life. And it is the answer. I think about my ancestor, Ashella Nettleton. And Ashella Nettleton had a cause. And his cause was converting people to Christianity. And he believed that people would die and go to hell, and he was saving their souls. He saved over 30,000 souls, and he had a fulfillment from that. Well, we don't even know if heaven or hell exists. And he's talking about, well, he saved all these people. And when he saved, and his strength, Ashella Nettleton, his strength at being able to convert people is he did it in a very principled way. He was a rival of Finley, and Finley would have big churches, and he'd have people come up, and he can try to convert people. But Ashael it was almost superficial. The way Finley would do it was somewhat superficial, but the way Ashella would convert people to Christianity was real deep. He would get to know them, all of them, on a personal basis. And after the large sermon was done, he would talk on an individual basis with these people, and he would tell them of the good news of Christianity and how it would improve their lives. And the difference between the converts to Ashael Nettleton and Finley was many of the converts to Christianity, Finley, like a year or two later, would go away from Christianity and go back into despair. But the converts made by Ashael Nettleton 20, 30, 40 years later never lost the faith. And I'm talking about converting people away from capitalism. I'm talking about, the social, we look at the Second Great Awakening was really the social awakening that led to the Second American Revolution, led to the abolitionist movement, led to great figures like John Brown, which is the mascot or the theme for anti-imperialist America, because slavery was the outmoded mode of production, the barbaric, outmoded, obsolete form of production of that day, just as imperialism is the outmoded, barbaric, obsolete form of production today. So if we're going to take on the legacy of John Brown, we have to fight against imperialism, and we have to do it with that raw passion. I often said I'm a bit agnostic, and I often said that my religion is whatever inspired John Brown. I mean, I feel it. There is a push. There is a drive. There's something bigger than me. And when I talk with people about socialism, And I talk about a better future, not in heaven, but on earth, a better future on earth. That dream, that push, and I'm a scientist, and I know it's happening in reality, and I see it in reality. There's something deep within inside me. And there's a feeling that I get from being a part of that, being part of a larger community, being closer to the people around me, bringing people together around me, and convincing as many people as I can to stop living biologically, stop living by day to day, stop simply caring about yourself and your family, but care about the larger society, and put material effort into spreading this understanding that a new world is possible. It's an absolute beautiful spiritual drive and passion that I feel that has given me fulfillment in my life. And I want to give that to other people. And I want to give that to them on a deep basis. And to be able to do that, I need to know them and understand them, understand the society which developed the working class. And understand in a way that cares about them, cares about their issues, and let them know I am not your enemy. Regardless of the monopoly capitalists have told you about socialism and communism solution and the answer in the future. I think that's, let me keep going through these comments. Total disaster. Judging by his TV, VCR, 90 stereo, DVD collection, and TV stand, I would say Dust has embraced. I don't embrace primitivism. There is, I'm into retro technology. I think it's interesting. The CR in capitalist society, it's usually what makes money that is considered the advancement in technology and not actually technology. And if you look at a CRT television, it has a different experience. It doesn't overwhelm you as much. Same with VHS collection. I really like different types of old technologies. It's not that I don't want to embrace the future. It's that technology has different aspects, and I'm also a bit of a historian. I also am dealing with a childhood of poverty, and grappling with that. For whatever reason it is, I like retro video games and old televisions and DVDs and just something. It's an interest of mine. It's a hobby. I also like records and a bunch of stuff, but I still believe in progress. I'm not a primitivist. Andy Funaro. We all owe a lot to Nicaraguan, Cuban, Haitians. They've taken a brunt of imperialism. Yes, sir. It's absolutely heroic what China has done, gone through a century of humiliation where the opium wars were pushed on, just as drugs are pushed on my community and Appalachia and the rural areas and the inner cities. Drugs are used to destroy the lives and criminalize the working class and oppressed people here. Opium was pushed on China, and they were kept in horrible conditions for over 100 years. They call it the Century of Humiliation. And Mao was able to break free from that and start to organize. And then Deng Xiaoping was able to innovate the economic system and push it even further. And then give trade and be able to give trade to the other oppressed nations. Cuba rose up. Libya rose up. Syria rose up. It's absolutely beautiful. Yes, living in a blatantly parasitic system is bad for mental health. Still going. Fusion City now. Fusion City. There is major issues with I used to think solar and wind were the issue, were the advancement. But if you look at Michael Moore's latest video, and they talk about some of the, a lot of the reason why the liberals are allowed to preach and promote solar and wind is because there's limitations in technologies. We need more higher and more advanced technologies to replace the old. And fusion technology really would be a threat to the energy dominance of the monopoly capitalists, and they don't want it. Fusion energy would create such an abundance of energy that we would be able to have such a more prosperous society. And it'd be a huge advancement towards human development and towards socialism. Socialism is about innovating. Being a leftist is about being innovative. So I think that's going to do it for the night. Sorry for the interruptions. Thank you so much for watching. If anybody got, I actually have the highest amount of viewership right now, right when I'm about to end it. If anybody wants to make a last minute comment, question, or request, please go ahead. If not, comrades, as always, we need to fight for all power to the people.